Can the late night games be over now? Please? Hey there, Habs fans. Welcome back to this week's episode of Habs Hockey Report right here on the All Habs Hockey Magazine YouTube channel, part of Rocket Sports Media, also an affiliate of the Hockey Podcast Network. And you can see right down here in the corner, we are sponsored by the fine folks over at DraftKings. Check down in the show notes for a special link just for you to take advantage of an incentive from DraftKings. Welcome to the show this week. Happy that you are here. My name is Amy Johnson, your host of the show each and every week. I also happen to be the lead correspondent over at ahlreport.com, covering the Laval Rocket and Montreal Canadiens prospects. Yeah, is everyone awake? Is everyone awake? Here's the thing. I'm going to freely admit I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it for the Habs games. I made it through like a period of each of the two Habs games this week in real time, and I was out. But I will tell you, I have a good reason. I have a good excuse. I covered both of Laval's games against the Abbotsford Canucks in British Columbia, who were playing in British Columbia this past weekend, and that required a 10 p.m. start on Saturday night and a Sunday night game as well. So I had a good excuse. But we're going to talk about all of that today, get you caught up on the Canadiens and the Laval Rocket, and hear from you from our question of the week, the feedback form question last week. Lots of some intriguing answers right there, and we're not going to waste a moment getting to all of it. So let's start with some Habs happenings. Did you know? You hear all of these people, 2-goal lead is the worst lead in hockey. Well, come on. Did you know that actually a 4-goal lead is the worst lead in hockey? Did you know that? No? Right, because most people wouldn't say that. Marty St. Louis said something to that effect after their loss against the Vancouver Canucks 7-6 late night Monday night. The Canadiens were up 4-0 early and blew it. They blew it. Vancouver, towards the end of the second period, really came back into things and took it to the house. And 7-6, the Canadiens walk out there with a big fat loss. And after the game, Marty St. Louis, and credit to Rick Stevens at allhabs.net for including this quote in his game recap. If you aren't bookmarking allhabs.net for our game recaps, you should do so right away. Credit to him for including this quote from Marty St. Louis, who basically said, this isn't a direct quote, so I'm kind of summarizing here, but basically he said, it's really hard to play against a team when you're up 4-0 because then they start to cheat and take bigger risks. Well, duh. That's kind of what happens when you're in a hole, when you're in a 4-goal hole. Any coach and any bench is going to say, hey, kick your bums into gear. And yes, you've got nothing to lose at that point. You're going to take a hit to make a play. You're going to take bigger risks. You're going to do things, maybe your defensemen are going to pinch a little bit deeper. You're going to do things that you aren't going to do when you're protecting a 4-goal lead, and when you have a 4-goal lead, it's not the other team that you need to worry so much about. It's worrying about that your bench doesn't get complacent in a 4-0 lead. Sorry, a little bit of a soapbox there. Have a little bit of an issue with what I consider kind of ridiculous statements like that. A 4-goal lead should not be, a really tough situation facing an opponent when you're up by 4 goals. So needless to say, and as even plenty of our Rocket Sports team members found out, most people, including myself, woke up Tuesday morning going, wait, what? It was 4-0 when I went to bed. How the heck did they lose that 7-6? So definitely not the best outing. Then they went to Seattle on Tuesday night and actually managed to get the win there, 4-2. Shane Wright, Juraj Slafkovsky, the timing was okay. Shane Wright was playing down in Coachella Valley on a conditioning stint. He had some points down there. Of course, they brought him back in time to slot him into the lineup to play the Habs. Do we remember over the summer when he was passed over by the Canadiens? And the hot mic that they had, the mic that they had him wired up, he looked at his dad and he's like, well, I can't wait to play against that team. Well, you knew he was going to get that opportunity. Scoring his first NHL goal. So, okay, we see you. That was made for some drama on Tuesday night, but the Canadiens do turn things around and get the 2 points with a good win there. And now they've got a decent amount of time off this week. Not time off, but some gappage in between games because the schedule this month is really wonky. I mean, 3 Monday games this month. There's a Friday game this month. Just kind of all over the place and lots of Western Conference play. It's the first time, but not the last time this month that the Canadiens will be playing late night games. They've got a couple of deep road swings way out west. So get the coffee brewing. Get the coffee brewing. You're going to need it. I know I needed it on Saturday night prior to the Laval game that started at 10 p.m. So coming up then later this week, the Canadiens are back home on Saturday night to welcome the LA Kings. So normal start time, Saturday night hockey. That's what we like to see. It's what we like to see. It certainly has been fun to watch. Really happy for Jonathan Kovacevic getting his first NHL goal. That's one of those AHL success stories that we like to highlight and note upon. He's worked really hard to even get to a point where he's earned a regular place in the NHL, and you knew it was just a matter of time before he potted that first NHL goal. And it's a big accomplishment for any player, but certainly one who's been biding his time and pushing through challenges to get to the NHL. Makes it just a little bit sweeter. So congratulations to him as well. Some guys out of the lineup. Rem Pitlick is currently on recall from Laval because we've got Gallagher out for a couple of weeks. It seems like injuries just keep popping up with the same guys over and over again this season. And so we'll see if anyone this few days off between the late games at the start of the week and the home game at the end of the week could perhaps give some of those guys a little bit of time to heal. So I do need to give you a feedback form question for this week. This was a question that I even asked kind of preseason, but I'm going to ask it again because perspectives have changed. We're a quarter of the way through the season and we've seen some different things happen. Maybe we've seen some performances that were unexpected. So my question for you is, now that the time is going to start, this is going to start being a hot topic. Who do you think is the first guy that Kent Hughes pulls the trigger on to trade away from the Montreal Canadiens? Who's the first guy that gets shipped out in the trading season that is very rapidly coming up upon us? Because maybe it's not the same person who you would have thought of before the season started. We'll be curious to see what all of you have to say. All right. Well, on this week's Rocket Booster, booster would be the word. We need the caffeine booster after last week, and Laval needs a booster of something. Red Bull? I don't know. Energy shot? It's not even it's not an energy thing. Maybe they need to calm down. Maybe they need to stop with the energy drinks because they can't stay out of the penalty box. And I feel like a broken record. I feel like I come to you every week and say, oh, they got into penalty trouble again. And the penalty trouble led to power play goals against, and it was part of their demise. It was not a pretty week. Granted, I mentioned last week that they had gotten a win in Utica on Wednesday night, and I said, hey, okay, they're going to Abbotsford this weekend. They're going to finish out this 4-game series against the Canucks. When the Canucks visited Laval a couple of weeks ago, they split that 2-game series 1-1. Laval won on Wednesday night. What can they do now? Well, I could tell you what they did. They lost both games. And not in a pretty fashion either. And they lost guys to injury. Jan Mysak left the first of the 2 games after the first period with an injury. He didn't come back to the game. He didn't play again for the rest of the weekend. Madison Bowie didn't play the entire weekend against his former team. He was on the trip, but obviously a disappointment. Madison Bowie not getting to play against his former team. Danik Martel was out the second game. Justin Barron was out the first game of the 2-game series, but because of all of the injuries and because they were plumb out of guys, in order to ice a full roster, Justin Barron came back and played as the 7th defenseman on Sunday. And he was only out for 1 game. So was he healthy enough to come back, or was it, okay, you're healthy enough, you're feeling well enough that you could play the game and get in there? It was a bit of a mess. Kevin Poulin was a bit of a mess over the weekend. In fact, Kevin Poulin got pulled after giving up 4 goals in Sunday's game. And if you listen to this week's episode of the Press Zone podcast, you will hear me get on my soapbox once again and go on a bit of a rant about that decision to pull Kevin Poulin. The decision was made to start him in back-to-back games. I should note it's because Caden Primo still was not well enough to make the trip. That cut that he got on his head while sitting on the bench as the backup in Belleville a week and a half ago still wasn't healed enough yet that it wouldn't hurt or be irritated by wearing his mask, so he still couldn't go on the trip. So Kevin Poulin and Joe Verbetic recalled from Trois-Rivières. The decision was made to go with Kevin Poulin back-to-back what was local time, a 7 p.m. and a 4 p.m. start, so less than 24 hours, and they said, okay, Kevin Poulin's the veteran guy. We think he can do it, even though he lost and faced it was a high-scoring game. So on Saturday, for my liking, I fully expected to see Joe Verbetic get his first AHL start. Why not? Perfect on Sunday. Perfect opportunity to give your young goaltending prospect his first AHL start, get a little bit of experience. You're in the basement in the standings as it is. You don't have much to lose, but you could lose an opportunity to give your young goaltender a little bit of experience. But no, the decision was made to go with Kevin Poulin, and he ended up getting yanked in the 3rd period. So Joe Verbetic got his very first AHL minutes coming in cold a quarter of the way through the 3rd period when they were already down 4-2 to try to help salvage things so that in the final 15 minutes of the game that perhaps the Rocket could put something together. In my opinion, and he did all right. He allowed 1 goal that he really didn't have a chance on at all. Not really anything he could do about the goal that went in past him. But for my liking, it's just not a fair situation to put that young goaltender in. But he did a commendable job. So hopefully he's going to get his own proper AHL start sometime soon, because you got to start working on that goaltending development all the way down through the system. Because goaltending is okay at best at the NHL level for the Canadiens organization right now. It is unreliable at best in Laval. And so, got to start looking at what's next coming down the pipeline. So it was a disappointing weekend for the Laval Rocket. To be sure, they find themselves firmly in last place in the North Division, in last place in the Eastern Conference, and I believe they're sitting at around 29th overall in the AHL out of 32 teams. It's a little bleak. It's a little bleak right now. And if you listen to this week's Press Zone podcast, you can listen to that. It's hosted by myself, joined by Patrick Williams and Rick Stevens for the AHL Hot Stove. You can find that at thepresszone.fm, thepresszone.fm. Go pretty detailed into what's going on with Laval, and we talk a little bit about, is there a light at the end of the tunnel? Can something change sometime soon? Certainly hope so for the sake of the prospects who are trying to develop down in the AHL. All right, well, on this week's Habs Fan Hub, we've got, don't forget, the feedback forum question for this week is, who do you now predict will be the first player traded away from the Canadiens this trading season? We'll be curious to know who you think is the first guy to get shipped out and why. Last week, we talked about how bad the power play has been and for Montreal and getting worse in some ways. And so the question was posed, is Alex Burrows cut out to coach at the NHL level, particularly if he is going to be the one running the power play? Ursa Major says something is lacking in the power play coaching, needs quicker decisions, crisper passing, better decisions on positioning and anticipation, more point shots. Something is lacking. I don't have the answer. Maybe a new coaching addition would spawn progress on the power play, more creativity in the toolbox, so less predictability. Yes, I just think someone who has better experience coaching a power play. Alex Burrows may have played on the power play, but it's coaching and playing are two different things. I know people want to argue that till they're blue in the face, that, well, no, if you play hockey, then you can coach hockey, and that's just simply not always the case. And that's nothing against Alex Burrows, but sometimes the transition from player to coach is a little more challenging for some than others. And I just am not convinced that Alex Burrows is the right guy for the job. Also, we have Jason Smith saying patience. Burrows will get things done. If not, we better get a draft pick, I guess. Next year, Montreal will start to fly. So thank you, Jason. Patience, of course, really needs to be the key for everyone right now. And we've said that since the summertime. Rebuild equals patience. And so we see a lot of people who seem to have kind of, okay, well, we went along with the rebuild concept for a couple of months, but now we like the wins, we like the results, and I feel like that patience is waning, but that patience really needs to be in place for probably a couple of years. And as far as getting a good draft pick, unfortunately, that seems to be slipping away from the Canadiens as well. We'll see if they're able to get anything done. I see them falling somewhere in the middle of the pack, maybe 20th, 18th or 20th in the league, which is obviously not good enough to make the playoffs, and I don't believe that they will make the playoffs this year, but they're also not going to be probably in the top 10 for a draft pick. And that could be interesting. We'll have to see what happens there. And then we have Center Heiss saying, sorry, Burrows may coach in the NHL at some point, but as for being a power play coach, not a chance, and he's had plenty of time to prove himself. He seems like a nice guy, but needs to be replaced as the power play coach. He gets the biggest failing grade. He was brought in too soon without the experience. I'm not sure why this hasn't been addressed by Habs management team. And yeah, I have to say I agree with you there. Definitely too little experience. I mean, Alex Burrows announced his retirement from his playing career, and I am not exaggerating. Within 1 to 2 hours after that announcement was the announcement that he had been hired as an assistant coach for Laval. So he was very green, very green when he came in. Not many people get to start their coaching career at the AHL level. So didn't have a ton of experience behind the bench with Joël Bouchard, and then got promoted probably too quickly to the NHL, and I just feel like he has floundered since then. And I think that he would be better served, I think, to spend more time and some years getting some experience at lower levels, maybe in junior, maybe in the Q, something, or the OHL, getting some really good experience working with young people and getting some good coaching experience, and then maybe try an AHL role again at some point down the road. I just think there just needs to be a better progression for him for coaching. So thank you to everyone who submitted your responses last week. It's always a pleasure to read all of the differences in opinions, and we enjoy responding to you as well. And we're looking forward to having some regular start times to hockey this week, and hopefully when we come back, we'll have some pretty fun things to talk about. It's getting to be the holiday season, and so we're going to throw in some holiday things here and there throughout this month and have a little fun as well as we gear up for the big holiday season. Christmas is coming, New Year's is coming, all sorts of fun things, and that means trade season's coming too. So thank you so much for watching. If you missed last week's show, be sure to check that out right here, and I'll see you back here next week for another episode of Habs Hockey Report right here at All Habs.